After a minute of a walk, Pinocchio found what he was looking for. Gordon's Hill Lake. It made a perfect place to cool off. Once he had a dunk, he looked out to the village through the top trees. There was no sign of the police car at the moment, but his thought about his visit to the high school got him worried. Would the cleaner tell the police to come after him? He couldn't have his outing spoiled. As he turned away, he saw a house on a hill. I hope to not get hanged on the tree this time. Who's living up here? He climbed the hill to have a look. When he reached the door, he knocked to see if the owner was at home. Shh! Come in. You need to keep out of sight of the police car, came the reply. Pinocchio opened the door to walk inside. Is anyone at home? He said when he got in through the door. There was no reply at first. Then a door to the next room opened, and a pair of eyes appeared. A pair of holes showed on a big dot claiming to be a face with a horn, and Pinocchio could see something familiar like the hair colored blue, but it was a mane that glows. The figure wasn't at all human, only a pony. It was Princess Luna. Then she recognized the boy's wooden face, nose and red hat. Hello, Pinocchio. It's good to see you again, awake and have wanted to visit Australia. I'm Princess Luna, and I brought you to life when visiting Italy, said she. Hello, Luna. I thought you were the fairy, but she's long gone, said Pinocchio. How is your journey to Snug? Asked Luna. Oh, it's been extraordinarily a daring one. I nearly had new misfortunes. First a police car, then almost getting caught in the high school after playing a piano, and almost got caught from the same police car, seeing it again. Pinocchio explained his escape from the misfortunes. He also told Luna about his first visit to Rosie at a station near the house. The more he expressed it, the more Luna grinned because her task had been completed. What you need to know is you're only here to do a 10-month job with polishing the engines, including the road vehicles. Once they are complete, you must return to Italy, as there can't be two of you, said Luna. I understand that. I've left a note on the table before I left the cupboard and house, said Pinocchio. But I'm only a little puppet boy, and boys can't drive trains or cars if they're at a number of 28. Of course you can't. I'll send you to one of the sheds, as you can't take the bus. They're resting. Twilight will show you what to do, she went on. Before Pinocchio would ask anything, he was sent to one of the sheds in a poof. He saw one shed was opened, but there was no sign of Twilight Sparkle. "Twilight, are you there?" he called, but there was no reply. He walked into the shed and had a surprise of seeing modern trains resting after finished with day's work. Titipo, Diesel, and Genie were surprised to see someone made of wood come to visit their shed. "Hello," Pinocchio said to them. "Who are you, and what kind of non-steam trains are you called?" "You're not running on coal. We're Titipo, Diesel, and Genie, and we're diesel trains as we run on fuel, not coal," said Titipo. "What's your name?" "I'm Pinocchio, and I'm a puppet. I'm to do a 10-month job, clean you and road vehicles," said Pinocchio. "You're clean, but the floor isn't." "Titipo isn't. I'm doing this side, and you're doing the right," said Twilight, who came popping up. "You like the job. It's a nice idea," said Pinocchio. They started cleaning Titipo and mopping the floor so as to have the place cleaned up for the next dirty train. He liked it, especially when thinking it a difference to Italy's watermill. Next he cleaned a bus tire he never met. One day, Pinocchio was working on Thomas. He had finished working in Tala and was covered in coal dust from the mine. Thomas eyed the puppet. "I don't believe we met, sir. I'm Thomas. Haven't you read my book?" he asked him. "Rosie told me about you, Thomas, but I haven't read your book," said Pinocchio. "The roadrunner said I was missing every number of years. This year is 2018. You've been around a lot than me." "Driver read your book, so you're first to be thought of before me," said Thomas. "It's been around for 136 years than my year of 34. My number's bigger than yours. Boy, I'm lucky." Thomas left after Pinocchio was finished. The months passed, and Pinocchio managed all right with cleaning every vehicle on road and rail. When the final month arrived, Pinocchio decided to head back to Devonport. But he had one more problem which will make him miserable. As he went to bed, he dreamed about the house he left and the first misfortunes that were forgotten, plus the events of meeting Luna, who brought him to life. and how he became friends with Thomas and Rosie and the South Korean vehicles. Suddenly, he was nudged out of his dream. Twilight was waking him up. "Morning, Pinocchio. You've got an early start to get back to Italy," said Twilight. "Morning, Twilight. Am I to walk back to where Rosie dropped me off?" said Pinocchio. "No, you're going to tell her by car and another that's a train," said Twilight. "You better keep an eye out for that police car. There's been talks happening in Margate, and sighting too. It's out of hand, aka it's a last misfortune like the ones you told me when we finished up for the day. I might have a think to get myself away from it, and I haven't been to tell her in my life," said Pinocchio, not knowing what the village was like. Pinocchio left the shed, and after thanking Twilight for the stay of his, he went to find his ride. The black motor car was waiting for him, and the Roadrunner was waiting with it. "Time to be in the cupboard, Pinocchio. I'm to head home while you're going to tell her," said he. "I'll be glad to be in the cupboard again, Roadrunner," said Pinocchio. "I'll never forget this outing." They got in the car, waited for anyone for a minute to stalk them, then began the long drive. They got on the road, which to their surprise wasn't full. It told them they could get to their destination without delay. The car took them down the southern outlet, through Hobart, and through Greenock, where a river bridge could have Pinocchio seeing it the first time. But while they crossed the bridgeside, they unfortunately saw two police officers who were, to their shock, checking each car. It was a smuggle season, and the law was to stop it. The Roadrunner and Pinocchio were trapped. How could they get to tell her if they were about to be talked into question when one needs to get back to Italy? "What are we to do with our car?" "You must have got it restored, and records of when it was brought," said Pinocchio in question. "I think this car I'm driving is registered, but the officers are checking for smuggled things," said the Roadrunner. "We'll have to tell them about it by showing its history papers." "But what about me? No one will believe my tales, and I got a growing nose that happens when I get into trouble," said Pinocchio. "That's the headmaster. He must have known you were visiting the high school. You can't talk to him." "I've got an idea. Look in the wood. There's a shed. We can park it in there and walk. It's a mile, but there's no other way." Quietly, they parked the car in the shed covered with trees. Then they walked, playing cool. As soon as they passed the hunters checking a car they stopped, they made a run when being far and out of distance reach. It was an hour till they reached the next town, New Norfolk, but the journey to Tala on foot was not easy. They needed a vehicle to avoid the walk. "Hey, look! There's a van down the next street," said the roadrunner. "It looks abandoned." "We could take that, I suppose," said Pinocchio. It was a three-wheeled van, quite right for them to take, so they got in it to continue the journey. "We'll need to give it petrol first," said the roadrunner. "There's a petrol can beside us." "I'll fill it up," said Pinocchio. "Let's hope the officers don't get us." Once it was full, the van's tank, they managed to get it to run with a struggle. Soon they got on the road, driving away from New Norfolk. It was while they drove they heard a shot. In their side mirrors, they saw it was the police car that was after them. "We'd better split up, Pinocchio. We can't tell them about your adventure, so it's time to hide the van. When we get out, I'll run in the direction of Don River, while you run in the direction of that siding. Rose is taking a drink," said the roadrunner. They found a bush on another road, so hid it in the growth. Then they split it up. Pinocchio arrived at the full siding, meeting up with Rosie, finishing her drink. "Hello, Pinocchio. How is Kingston?" asked she. "It's been all right, but I need to head to Tala. Can you take me there?" said Pinocchio. "Of course. I was heading home." When he sat in the cab, they set off, once the puppet was away from the furnace. The hill to Queenstown arrived after many miles were taken. Over it they went, through the village, and continued the last journey to Tala. Once again, they were in the open valley. Pinocchio got off so as to look round this area. Rosie told him to follow the track before she left. Pinocchio walked beside the track, keeping an eye out for anyone that would come after him. The sun was up in the sky, and the clouds were just gathering to make rain. "Maybe I'll rest before continuing the journey. I don't have a bottle." But he continued as the heat wave wouldn't come. After many miles of lane and track, he came to another hill with a road curving up and over. Pinocchio had never been along that before, let alone it had been years since it was not seen from a puppet. "This is astonishing," I've never been here since sleeping in the cupboard was giving me an unseen dream. And this is it, said Pinocchio. I could do with a train sighting before getting on a train. I will hitch a ride and get to what twilight means about visiting it, he went on. How I'll be safe in that cupboard when I get home to Italy. He started walking the hill, following the track. Once at the top, he stopped to rest and try to sight his next ride. A sudden shout came hitting his ears, making him turn around and look behind his back to the bottom of the hill he climbed from. Oh, horror! Oh, woodcuts from the disguised cat and wolf! Oh, lawbreaker hunter! Oh, misery! From a distance from where he was standing, he could see the same police car from Margate the day he went to Snug. Poor Pinocchio started shaking his legs. He turned on his wooden heel and ran on the other side. He ran a mile, taking the direction of the track, not wanting to stop, only to keep going till he was in the safety of the Tulla village. The police car began to chase him as the police were hot on his heels. The little puppet knew one thing that no human could do, and that was when it can't run as fast as a car. Just on the side of the track and road, he saw a woodland. It was his only hope to get himself out of sight of the police. Pinocchio, thirsting for escape, crossed the road, scrambled up the slope, and went straight into the wood. All of a sudden, he tripped over a stone and fell off his feet straight into a lake. He looked out through the trees to see if the police car was off his trail. It wasn't, but the officers looked for what seemed an hour. Pinocchio stayed low in the lake, waiting to walk alone. "We better call it quits till we hunt him tomorrow," he heard the officer say. And the police left. Pinocchio, wet and cold, got out of the lake and slowly walked out of the wood. He could see the sign telling him he arrived at his destination. "Hello, young one. You made it. Well, she told me you were coming here," said wee Georgie Wood. "I'm glad to make it here in one piece," said Pinocchio. "I was to get back to Italy, so as to get back to a house near station Rosie took me from. If you walk in the wood, you might find a tunnel of adventures. You'll soon get home safely," said wee Georgie. "In there? Oh, that's why I wasn't going back to Devonport. What's going on there?" Pinocchio asked. "It's got a lot of guards at the dock. Twilight told me after she went there to check," said Rosie. "Next time visit New Zealand. It's hopefully a good place to work, in a railway, in Glenbrook. Pinocchio walked into the wood. He found a tunnel mouth waiting for him to walk through, with the bushes that have grown about it. His glance at it lasted for a minute till he walked through it. Once he walked through the tunnel mouth, he found himself back in the woods with the tree he was hanged from, and where the house and grave of the fairy with the dark blue hair stood. He saw the track Rosie took him along the day before, but it was, he did realize, a long walk home. I know the way home. My human self and his father should be at home first. They can't know how I got to Australia, said Pinocchio. All of a sudden, he caught sight of an engine resting in a siding of the wood, taking a drink. It was Thomas. "Hello, Thomas. What are you doing in Italy?" Pinocchio asked. "Exploring, Pinocchio. I've been around the world, but not this country," said Thomas. "Where are you heading?" "I'm heading to the station I met Rosie after I left the house. Can you take me there?" "Of course. Oh, you'll be lucky to know that the father and your human self are visiting Australia to see an old friend that's never seen for years. So you have time to get back in the cupboard." Pinocchio climbed into the cab, and they set off to the station where the puppet's adventure began. They went back along the coast, through the land of busy bees, past the beach, and finally the other wood with the building. "Thanks for the lift. I won't forget the second adventure. Now I'd better get in the cupboard," said Pinocchio. "You're welcome. Now I'd better get back to Australia. I've got my shed to rest in after an overseas trip," said Thomas, and off he steamed. As soon as he was out of sight, Pinocchio walked off the station, walking back to the house. He arrived at the door, finding a key sticking out of a crack from the top. "A spare key! I can use that to get in," said Pinocchio. "What a nice surprise to come home to." He unlocked the door, closed it after going through its doorway, and had a happy sigh to find himself in the workshop he left. "Ah, it's good to be home," said he. Then he noticed the lock on the cupboard door. It was mended, Oh, good. I'll be glad to sleep with it closed. I think I'll have another sleep, and maybe visit Australia when it's safe, said Pinocchio. He walked to the cupboard, climbed in it, closed the door, and slept. As he slept, his ability wears off. He was now a limp once again, except his ears that can listen. Outside, steaming away from the house and village, Thomas was heading to the wood, finding the buffers to get home out of Italy. But he knew the secret had to be safe, which it was never found out, as the world only knows the human boy of Pinocchio. The end. This second adventure about the wooden boy Pinocchio has been written in Barnhouse Company. That's our house. I wrote it on a typewriter, and the last 2 pages were handwritten. I'm glad I did some handwriting in primary school.